Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessie Billing, and I head up the alumni team at Surrey, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our What It Takes event. Today's event is the first in a series of talks where you will hear from guest speakers on a wide range of topics, all designed to help kickstart your career and help you get a foot in the door. We'll be asking the big questions and inviting our guest speakers to offer advice and share their personal journeys. Today's talk is called What It Takes to Get Your Foot in the Door. We put this talk together because we know that many of you are facing challenges in the jobs market right now. So tonight, we tell you about the practical ways to maximize your chances of landing that dream job, how to network in the digital space, and how to boost your skills to give you the edge over other candidates. Today, we're joined by a great panel of speakers who are here to share their advice on what it takes to get your foot in the door. Before I hand over to our host for tonight, here are some ways that you can get involved in this session. If you have a question for our speakers, enter it into the Q&A box and we will answer it at the end of the talks. If you think of a question you want to ask later after tonight, then please email alumnievents@surrey.ac.uk. If you have any ideas for future topics you'd like covered or would like to speak at the future event, please do get in touch. We would love to hear from you. And now I'm delighted to introduce our host, Louis Emmett Stern.
Thank you, Jessie, and good evening, everybody. My name is Louis, and I'm a final year GSA Theatre and Performance student and Senior Student Ambassador for the University of Surrey. I'm really excited to be hosting the first What It Takes event live from our campus TV studio. For many of us, this event could not have come at a better time, and I'm certainly looking forward to getting some useful tips and advice from our guest speakers on how I can get my foot in the door when I graduate. As Jessie mentioned, the event is being recorded, so if you have friends and family that weren't able to attend, do share the video link with them, which will be sent out to you after the event. On a final note, before I introduce our speakers, please do remember to post your questions in the Q&A box during the event, and we'll answer them at the end of the session. Here at the University of Surrey, we are extremely fortunate to have a dedicated team helping Surrey students achieve their career goals and dreams, which leads me to welcome our first speaker, Heidi Hazur. Heidi is the Senior Director of Employability for the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences and the Director of Employability for the Surrey Business School. Before joining Surrey, Heidi worked in banking, exhibition and events management and taught in both Japan and the USA. She specialises in communication, education and research, consulting and executive coaching, and preparing staff to conduct business internationally. We're pleased to welcome Heidi tonight to tell us what it takes to get your foot in the door.
Good evening, my name's Heidi Hazur and I'm the Director of Employability for Surrey Business School. This evening, as part of the What It Takes series, I'm here to talk to you about how you might get your foot in the door in the current changing circumstances. And the overarching theme of my talk is going to be what has changed and what hasn't. So how has the pandemic impacted on graduate recruitment? And what does this mean for you, whether you're a final year student, a recent graduate, or somebody a little further into their career who's looking for a change of role or looking to get back into the job market? So this has kind of come out of the US at the beginning of the pandemic. There was a suggestion that we might have a V-shaped recovery, so a really kind of strong decline followed by a really kind of sharp recovery. And I think this might have been based on the optimism that this would be a shorter term phenomenon. And as time has gone on, we've realised that this isn't going to be solved in a short space of time. So what we're looking at now is potentially something which is more K-shaped. And so we see two possible trajectories depending on the industry. So perhaps things are a bit more positive, as we can see from the blue line for recovering industries such as technology, retail, particularly we're talking about online retail rather than high street, as it were, and supermarkets and IT, legal, finance, professional services, and overall sectors where remote working is a real option. industries needing assistance and likely to see a slower recovery and an ongoing decline perhaps might be travel, entertainment, hospitality and food services. And I don't think that's probably a surprise to any of us because that's what we're hearing in the media very much right now. Now, looking at these different sectors more specifically, thinking about the graduate recruitment market, I think it's really helpful to break this down a little bit. And if we look at this graphic, we're focused on areas of green, of course. They're suggesting the areas that are doing better and the red is doing worse. So again, on the left-hand side, we have the more resilient sectors that I've just referred to, and then the less resilient sectors. What I've highlighted in the middle here is that for graduates, I think it's the most positive picture as opposed to non-graduates or even internships and placements, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about that also. So in terms of what we're looking at here, it's the percentage change. This is information from the Institute of Student Employers for their members that they've surveyed who they work with and recruit graduates in terms of the different sectors. And we can see actually at the bottom, health and pharmaceuticals across the board have been really positive, and even for non-graduates actually. But charity and public sector are holding up pretty well. Legal is holding up well, and again, finance and professional services. So I think, this is a positive picture overall if you're lucky enough to be a graduate or looking to graduate. There has been a bigger impact on SMEs, so small and medium-sized enterprises, rather than on larger businesses. And again, I don't think this is probably a surprise to us. But the least impact across all sides of businesses, again, is on graduates. In terms of internships and placements, I think early on in the process, and some of these figures do come from kind of 2 or 3 months ago. Obviously, it's very much a moving feast at the moment, but I think we're seeing kind of the direction of travel indicated by these. In terms of internships and placements, those are increasingly being taken online, particularly in the case of internships, and actually opening up more opportunities. So I think there's a positive picture there. But again, that tends to apply to the larger organisations. The graduate labour market, happily, is hugely resilient. And although it's too early to fully understand the impact of the epidemic, I think the pandemic, it's easier to kind of look back to the financial crisis. And of course, that is very different in nature to what we're experiencing right now. But back then, Institute of Student Employer members predicted a 25% contraction in graduate hires. And that was, a well-spread kind of feeling that there was going to be huge negative impact on graduate recruitment. But in fact, they only retracted by 8.9%, and even in 2010, they grew by 8.9%. So we ended up with a neutral rate of growth in just 1 year, which I think is a real positive and is certainly giving us optimism for our current situation. So graduate recruitment does continue. Though the overall fall in vacancies in early talent market is 23%, again indicated by ISE members, this means, in the glass half full size, that over 75% of recruitment is still happening. Indeed, one of the concerns of employers is that the perception of graduates that there are things that are so dire and there are no vacancies that they don't bother trying. They look at something alternative, maybe it be a master's degree. And actually, at the time of the 2009 financial crash again, 50% of the Association of Graduate Recruiters members didn't even fill all of their vacancies. So I think that's something really important to keep in mind. The fact is employers are still very engaged. At university, we're finding employers coming to us just as much as they always have. They're very keen to interact with our students and our alumni and share all the great opportunities they have and really get their hands on fabulous students we have. So vacancies continue, a slow but steady recovery, and that was according to Indeed. So what does this mean for you, wherever you are in your career? Well, I guess slight downside at the moment that a lot of students pick up work experience while they're studying in retail, perhaps in Guildford, again on the high street, in hospitality, bars and restaurants, and even clubs and societies on campus, which are still operating but obviously can't operate quite to the same level as they traditionally have. However, as I've already alluded to, the good news is employers have really been flexible and adaptable, and particularly in the UK here, in terms of taking their internships and switching them to virtual internships and finding this kind of hybrid approach of some virtual, some in person, although that can be limited at the moment, works really well for them. It's more inclusive of a wider group of students, and it also allows them to take more students through the internship process. So I think that's a real positive. And I think after the initial shock, again, we're seeing placements start to pick up as employers are learning how to make it work, albeit a lot of those placements are done remotely now. So we see a shift to remote working across a number of industries. But as we saw earlier as well, those sectors that lend themselves to remote working are shown to be pretty resilient. Digital skills are key, professional online engagement with recruiters and beyond. You know, I would have been doing this talk in person not so long ago, and here we are all having adjusted to this new reality. The tools were always there, but and many jobs and industries were making good use of them, but now we all really have to make good use of them, and employers are expecting that. They're expecting us to be proficient with these technologies. Remote working is very much here to stay. The business is intending to continue with home working and even increase it as a kind of permanent business model. They recommend, they recognise that it's really important for staff well-being. Of course, it reduces overhead, so reducing costs right now is a priority for a lot of businesses. And they also recognise, in some cases, it can actually increase productivity. 74% of IT and comms and 62% of professional services employees were working remotely, and those are figures from the ONS as recent as the 8th of October, so very current numbers. Employers are recruiting online. This is extracted from Schroders recruitment process, but it's a very common process that we expect to see for a large organisation. And I think the online application assessments and video interview we were seeing pre-pandemic. But now we're seeing these in-person stages, the assessment centre and final interviews, even go online. So what can you do to improve your chances in this new situation? Well, focus on the resilient sectors that I've already talked about. Ensure you are digitally literate and professional for recruitment and remote working. And this, I think, applies particularly to our students who, although they're doing some of their studies remotely right now, are not used to necessarily interacting in a professional world in this virtual way, using, as we increasingly are, tools like Zoom and Microsoft Teams. Update and be active on your LinkedIn profile. Don't just do it and kind of leave it. Add on there things, activities that you've been up to, things that are going on, things that you want to celebrate. And so employers are really impressed when it seems like that's kind of a moving feast on your profile there, and you're very much engaged with it. And prepare for virtual interviews and assessment centres, because they are shifting, as I've just alluded to, and they can be stressful performance situations anyway, so we want to make sure that we're as prepared and comfortable as we can be so we can bring our best self to those situations. Demonstrate your adaptability. These have always been key competencies employers look for, but in terms of now, with so many changes, being especially adaptable and resilient is really key, of course. And I think the final point I want to make is, you know, really what hasn't changed. It's all about connecting with people. You know, it's not so much what you know, but who you know, as has always been the case, or kind of how you get to know them. So it's about networking. Reach out to your networks, other students, other alumni, people in organisations you've worked for. Use Facebook, use LinkedIn. Find points of commonality with people. That's often how we connect, something, an interest in common, a passion we have, somewhere we worked, whatever it might be, or a particular project. That's a really helpful way of connecting with somebody. Make sure you do your research about any roles you're interested in, the organisations, in terms of connecting with people. Don't just send an invite to somebody on LinkedIn without putting something in there that might encourage them to want to connect with us. You've got to be proactive. You know, this goes hand in hand with being resilient. it is ultimately down to you, and make a good impression at every opportunity, because every small opportunity could potentially lead to something.
Brilliant. Thank you, Heidi, for your insights. Up next, we are delighted to feature some real-life stories from our alumni. Just to remind you, if you think of any questions during any of these talks, please feel free to type them into the chat box where we'll pick them up at the end. Before then, we virtually welcome back Surrey graduate Sydney Carnes to share his story about what it took to secure his first role. Sydney graduated in 2019 with a bachelor's degree in business management and now works at Rolls-Royce Motor Cars in the Global Sales Operations Development Department. Welcome, Sydney.
Hi everyone, my name is Sydney Carnes and I'm glad to be here with you this evening for this virtual event. So thank you very much for having me and thank you for joining. I graduated from the University of Surrey in 2019, so last year, feels a lot longer than a year ago, with a degree in business management. I'm going to share with you my university experience, some employability advice, and also a little bit about what I do now. I'll also be involved in a live Q&A session at the end of the event, so please write down and submit any questions that you may have for me and I'll do my best to answer them at the end. I came to the University of Surrey on a standard 3-year undergraduate program without any real plan in terms of what I wanted to do to fully embrace the engagement opportunities that were available at Surrey for me. I decided early on in my first year that I wanted to take advantage of a couple of course opportunities that were offered. I decided that I wanted to partake in the study abroad program, which was offered in my second year, and also made the decision to switch on to a placement year course because I believed the year in industry while at university would help me in my future career. In terms of part-time work and extracurricular that I got involved with in my first year, I managed to get a job at Holiday Inn Guildford and Ascot Racecourse after a part-time job fair in Rubik's. Extracurricular-wise, I joined the Business Society and Economic and Finance Society. I didn't get too involved, but played football through them and obviously enjoyed the bar crawls and some social events that they put on. I also began to build relationships with people around the university. As I said, I knew I wanted to study abroad, so I started to speak to the global exchange coordinators and my personal tutor. And in terms of placement years, started talking to my PTY coordinator, who was Heidi, who just spoke previously. I just wanted to build relationships with them, kind of get on their radar, either by arranging meetings or a quick chat or sending them an email. At the end of my first year, I found out I had been accepted to attend my first choice partner university, the University of Sydney in Australia, which I promised was not just because it shares my same name. While I was out there, I got involved in part-time work, working at a backpackers bar and a hostel. I joined a few societies, surf club, bushwalking society, football society, because I just really wanted to fully involve myself with the experiences available to me and make the most of my time there. I returned my second semester of my second year to Surrey and continued part-time work with Ascot Racecourse and also became a study exchange mentor and buddy. So I worked with outgoing and incoming study exchange students at the university. I then did my placement year. I worked for Rolls-Royce Motor Cars and their global sales operations team. All the experience that I had leading up to that was only that part-time work and extracurricular, as I've just mentioned, and it was my first real full-time job, and it was a really good experience. If you can do a placement, make the most of it. Treat it as a 1-year job interview as such, and a way into a future role. I came back from my final year and joined the Global Exchange Office as one of their peer advisors and got really involved with the study abroad program. Extracurricular-wise, I did a few events for Unitemps involved at the universities, from open days to fairs. I was a professional placement year coach, the business school, helping other students with their CV and cover letters and the placement year application process. I also did a Global Graduate Award in Spanish, which is the language program through the university. Now, the point of running me through my university experience wasn't to bore you with my CV or make you jealous of the fact that I worked at Holiday Inn. It was to show you a kind of portfolio of experiences that I built up throughout my 4 years. If you remember back to the first slide that I showed you with the three blank rows for first, second, and third year, you can see how I kind of built up my university experience through part-time work, course opportunities, and extracurricular activities. These were now all things that I could leverage while applying for graduate jobs. So then, what are some recommendations from me? I strongly believe it is key to first have a variety of experiences, but also be able to present these experiences in an advantageous way. working at the Holiday Inn or at a backpackers bar in Australia don't necessarily relate to anything that I do now, but they did help me build transferable skills, whether it was working in a team, balancing university and work, my communication skills, which are what graduate employers are looking for from graduates. Embrace all the engagement opportunities open to you, do part-time work where and if you can, get involved with clubs and societies. That's something I wish I did more at university. All these things not only look great on a CV, but also give you the content to address questions in a job interview, which only builds your confidence. If you've potentially missed out on placement or work experience, look at alternative ways of developing your skills and experience. Maybe it's through volunteering, mentoring, joining societies outside of university. In addition, see if you can take some online courses or qualifications on Udemy, Google Digital Garage, or especially LinkedIn. I just got a LinkedIn Premium account a few months back, a free trial, and did a few courses on there to refresh my knowledge on a few topics which really helped me in the workplace. I mean, LinkedIn for me is a big one. Build your profile, connect with your course mates, tutors, and have this kind of professional network before even leaving university. Make posts about things you get involved with. Employers do look at LinkedIn profiles and they do like to see activity. But also use LinkedIn to your advantage. There's a great job search function where you can find graduate roles, internships, full-time roles, and anything that's available. Everyone will have a unique university experience and dependent on what you've chosen to engage with. But I recommend having as much experience as you can and get involved with as much as you can manage alongside your studies. Now then, what do I do now? Upon finishing university last year, I returned to Rolls-Royce Motor Cars on the graduate scheme, joining the same department that I left as an intern, the Global Sales Operations team. On the graduate scheme, I've had the opportunity to experience different areas of the business. I'm currently with the Global Product Communications department, where I've been a part of launching our new car, which debuted in September, and the subsequent global media events that have happened over the last couple of months, working with media, journalists, and social media influencers. It's been really great working during the pandemic and seeing how a business can adapt and still be able to launch a new luxury product. And touching on the pandemic, it's not all doom and gloom out there. I know it's doomy and gloomy and it's times are tough, but there are still opportunities available. Here at Rolls-Royce, our interns and graduates started last month like they would have any other year, and applications are also open for our graduate and internship programs for 2021. So if you're interested, there's the URL. Be sure to check them out. And that's all from me. Thank you guys very much for listening to me and thank you for your attention. Again, I'll be at the live Q&A session at the end of the event, so please feel free to ask me any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney. Some great advice there for both our current students and for recent graduates looking to get into graduate schemes next year. Our second graduate story takes us back a little further. Whilst we may be in the midst of a global pandemic, this isn't the first time we've experienced challenges around employment. The 2008 financial crisis led to a huge rise in unemployment. Here to give a first-hand account of job hunting during that period, which parallels with the situation we find ourselves in now, is Surrey graduate Mike Blakeney. Mike graduated in 2009 with a bachelor's degree in politics. Please join me in welcoming back Mike.
Hi, my name's Mike Blakeney. I'm a Surrey University graduate. I graduated in 2008-2009, the year of the financial crisis. I was a politics student and I really wanted to go into a public affairs career when I graduated, but as I learned when I was graduating, times were quite difficult and that wasn't quite so simple. I'm happy to say now I am in that career that I wanted to do. I really enjoy what I want to do. I'm happy I persevered in getting to it. But I'm sure that the people who are graduating today will be thinking, like I did, what's the market going to be like, and how's it going to be for people when they do that? And I guess I can share my experience on that. When I graduated, what I didn't realise at the time was that the jobs I was applying for that were graduate jobs, actually many of those people who were applying for that were people with 3, 4, 5 years experience in the role, and they should have been in jobs that were more senior than that. But given the financial crisis, people were making redundancies, people were downsizing, and the jobs just weren't there. So people who were made redundant were just applying for graduate jobs in order just to have a salary. And as you can imagine, me trying to apply for those same roles, I didn't have a chance, but at the time I didn't know. So I applied and it was tough and it was demoralising. But I think one of the lessons I took away from that in retrospect is that getting the job you want isn't always a straight A to B. It's not always as simple as you apply when you graduate and you get the thing you want. So what I would say to the people who are graduating this year, and from my experience, is have tenaciousness, have perseverance, because it's not going to be easy. When you apply for jobs, when you're a graduate, and you'll find that it's tough because it's one of the most personal things you will probably ever do. You're putting yourself on the block. You're saying, I want this role because of X, Y, Z, and because I have these experiences. And when you don't get people responding to you, and when you get people, when you go for an interview and you get people turning you down, it's hard not to take that personally, because really you're the one in the hot seat. But you also don't know what's happening on the other side. You know that the economy is in a difficult place, and that's why all I can say is be tenacious and keep going. And the other thing I would say is get experience, because really there is there's nothing to compare to experience. So what do I mean by that? I mean, if you have the opportunity over the summer, get some work in something, even if it's not exactly what you want to do, just something related to what you want to do, because that will give you a base of skills, but it will also show for potential future employers that you're really interested in that sector and you've got ambitions to do it. If you're graduating and you don't have the opportunity to do that, try and get work in whatever you can, and something that's as close to what you want to do, and have a plan and work to it. Because for me, when I graduated, I didn't get the job that I wanted. I ended up going for something that was slightly different. But I'm really glad that I did that, because what it meant was that I got a few years under my belt of something related to what I wanted to do, and then a few years later I did the job. I applied for the job that I wanted and I got it, and I've never looked back since then. So the lesson from my perspective is that in maybe 10, 11 years' time, you'll be looking back on this moment as a really formative one where you learned how to be resilient, how to work hard, how to take, the failures and the blows that come with the real world of work, and find a way through it, and look back and think, I'm really glad that actually I didn't have the easy route, because I now really appreciate what I have today, because I had to work for it, and I know that I earned what I got in the end. So it's hard, but keep going, keep your head up, get the experience when you can, work at it, and time will pass, and hopefully in 10 years' time you'll be where you want to be as well.
Thank you, Mike, for sharing your story and your advice for those of us starting out today. Now, with all this talk of resilience and persistence, self-reflection and marketing your own skills, what better way to end the evening than by hearing from one of Surrey's experts who is here to guide you. Do keep those questions coming in on the chat, and we'll pick these up after the next speaker. Our final talk from today is from Andrew Bennett, who joins us from the Employability and Careers team here at the university. Through the work carried out by Andrew and our other fantastic careers advisors, Surrey enables students, graduates and researchers to take effective ownership of their careers. Our Surrey Careers Advisors help students develop resilience by supporting them through challenging selection processes to achieve success in a competitive global market. Andrew will talk us through what Employability Careers has to offer and share his advice for those looking to start their new career right now.
Hello everybody, my name's Andrew. I'm one of the careers advisors from the Employability and Careers team here at Surrey, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the help and advice that we can offer you. Our service is available to you whether you are a current student or whether you're a recent graduate. You're really welcome to take full advantage of the help we can offer. I thought it might be worth just saying something about the current graduate job market. We know that things are going to be more competitive this year, but it's important for you to realise that there are still really great opportunities out there. Most recruiters are still actively looking for good candidates. It's never been more important though, because it will be more competitive, for you to get the help that you need in order to make sure you really do yourself justice as you go through the application and interview processes. In terms of the help we can offer you, first thing to say is we've got a whole series of information resources you can get access to. It's worth mentioning our vacancy site, which allows employers targeting Surrey students and graduates to upload vacancies that you can access. So do make sure you take full advantage of our vacancy service. In addition, the Careers Advisor team have written a whole series of really useful information leaflets that give you a really good starting point on lots of issues of common interest. So you can see that we've written these leaflets on, how to produce effective CVs, how to develop a LinkedIn presence, help with interviews, assessment centres, psychometric testing. We've even got a leaflet on the hidden job market, so looking to make your job seeking a little more proactive. So, these are really worth making use of, and you can access them through Surrey Pathfinder. As well as our information resources, we also organise a whole series of really high-profile events. So I just wanted to give you a flavour of the events that are taking place over the next few weeks. It's not a comprehensive list, there are going to be other things happening as well. I just thought it gave you a bit of an indication of what we have coming up. So you can see that we have events that are run by graduate recruiters. So we've got EY running a session on the 29th of October. We have sessions covering all different aspects of the job selection process. So we've got sessions on cover letters, using LinkedIn effectively. We've got a session on winning at interviews. A couple of other sessions that are coming up. We've got our virtual law fair and an interesting sounding session on the pharma and healthcare sector, looking at opportunities not only for scientists but for non-scientists as well. So, just an idea and a flavour of what we have coming up. All of these events are going to be run virtually, so you'll be able to access these wherever you are in the country, wherever you are in the world, so it will make them really accessible to you. And you can see these all listed on the Pathfinder platform, and we'll be looking at where you can access details a little later. So in addition to our information resources and the events that we're running, we can also offer you individual advice. And you can see here that the Careers Advisors offer careers appointments, a minimum of 30 minutes duration. You can use these to talk about your future career direction, perhaps to get help with a challenging application, either for a job or for postgraduate study. We can give you advice on interviews, or we can even offer you a mock interview. So you can use these appointments for anything that you need to discuss in terms of your career plans. We also offer slightly shorter appointments, which we really feel are most appropriate for current students, for help with quick advice with a CV or a cover letter. We often find when it comes to graduates, it often makes more sense to book a slightly longer appointment. Students can actually book appointments online, whereas graduates can email us and we will arrange appointments for you. So if you just email us at careers@surrey.ac.uk, we'd be very happy to arrange an appointment for you. Again, our careers appointments, all of our individual advice and guidance appointments, are being run virtually using MS Teams and Zoom. So again, it can make these appointments really accessible. I did say I would just say a little more about the Surrey Pathfinder platform, and I would hope that a lot of you will already be familiar with the Pathfinder platform. You do have your own Pathfinder account, and it looks a little bit like this when you go into your Pathfinder account. You'll see along the top a number of icons. So you'll see the events icon is not surprisingly where you will see details of forthcoming events. You can actually search for events. You can actually sign up for events online using Pathfinder account. Students can book individual appointments using Pathfinder, as I said a moment ago. And you also see the opportunities icon is where you can access our online vacancy site. A couple of other things just to say. If you look at the boxes in the middle of the slide, the Get Started box will take you through to the listing of the listing of information leaflets that I mentioned earlier. Discover and Explore will take you to all of our really interactive resources, so you can find our practice psychometric tests. You can get access to our interview simulator, which allows you to practice your interview skills using your laptop. There's also a link to our Employability Award, and I just want to say a little bit more about that now. So we're really proud of our Surrey Employability Award. The aim of the award is to encourage students to really engage with wider activities whilst they're at university. So, to achieve the Employability Award, you may need to undertake some work experience, undertake some volunteering, engage with student activities, student societies. You'd need to engage in some of our employability events. You don't necessarily have to do all of these things. You can plan your own pathway in order to achieve the Employability Award. So the aim is that, it gives you some more substance for your CV by encouraging you to engage in these activities. But I think really importantly, as part of the award, you need to reflect on what you've achieved through these activities. And it really helps you to see the skills that you've developed that will really then allow you to make more effective applications, to perform better at interview, because you'll be more aware of all of the skills you've gained throughout your time at university. If you're in the final year now and you haven't engaged in the Employability Award, it's not too late to join up now. And in fact, if you've undertaken some of the activities already during your time at university, you'll be able to use these towards your Employability Award. So you may find, you've already ticked off a number of the boxes already. I just wanted to say a little bit about the Graduate Outcomes Survey. So if you have completed your studies from Surrey already, you may well be invited to participate in the Graduate Outcomes Survey. The survey looks at what people are doing 15 months after completing your studies. So if you completed your studies in July 2019, you probably will be being invited to participate in the Graduate Outcomes Survey now. The survey is really valuable. Students graduating from universities across the country are invited to participate, and it allows us to see what people are doing after completing different courses of study. So I'd say if you are invited to participate, I would encourage you to engage with the survey, and it can provide tremendously useful information for those that come after you. Just want to leave you with a few top tips. So my first top tip will be quite predictable, is to make full use of the help and advice available from Employability and Careers. Second top tip is believe in yourself. Sounds a bit corny, but I think it's so important that you value all of the skills and knowledge that you have gained throughout your time at university, both through your studies and other things that you've been doing. You will have a lot to offer employers, and it's so important that you remember that. My third top tip is don't start applying willy-nilly to every and any job that is out there. It's far better to make well-researched, high-quality applications. There's a limit to how many really good applications you're going to be able to put together. It's far better to put together slightly fewer really high-quality applications. I think you're so much more likely to be successful if you do that. My fourth top tip is perhaps for people who may have found that their career plans have been particularly impacted by the pandemic. So if your chosen career has been really badly affected, it's so important that you realise that you will have skills that will allow you to be highly employable in other sectors. Most large graduate recruiters, most of their opportunities are open to graduates of any discipline. So the graduate job market is really, really flexible, and you will have skills that will enable you to succeed in more than one area of work. Finally, because we know it's a difficult job market, I just want to encourage you to persevere and to be resilient when you're looking for job roles. You may well find you get some knockbacks, but it's so important that you don't give up, that you persevere, that you keep going, that you learn from the experiences, so you learn from interviews that you have, and that we are here and available to help and support you along the way. Best of luck with all of your career plans.
Thank you, Andrew, and to all our speakers for some truly insightful presentations and useful tips. Thanks very much for all your questions. We've received a fantastic number throughout the course of the evening. So I'd like to welcome back all of our speakers, Heidi, Mike, Sydney, Andrew, who are joining us remotely. Hello, guys.
Hi.
Hi, brilliant, fantastic. So, if we start off with a first question, which is to the panel, which is, I'm thinking about further study because of the lack of jobs. What's the general consensus on this? Let's go to Andrew to start with.
Oh, hello. I think one of the points that we're making and has been made is there are still a lot of jobs out there. So it's really important that that there isn't an assumption that there won't be jobs to apply for. There will be. Further study can be really valuable, but I think students should really be looking to do this for positive reasons. It can really enhance somebody's future career prospects, but I don't think I would encourage someone to do it just because they think the job market is difficult. I still think there's a lot that they can compete for, and there are great opportunities still out there.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Heidi, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I think just, one comment to add to Andrew's there, which is if you were to go for further study, something that's very specific and tailored to something you already have an interest in. I think we know we do better at things when we feel passionately about them, and that certainly applies to study. I think when you're talking to potential employers in the future, it'll be helpful to talk about that further study in terms of, I was really driven, passionate about this field. So I wanted to make sure that I develop my knowledge and my skill set further so that when I get the job, I can kind of hit the ground running. So I think if you're going to do it, then it's something very specific to a specific field you're intending to go into.
Brilliant. Thanks, Heidi. Sydney, if you've got anything to add?
Yeah, I think on what they said, it definitely need a passion to continue on to further study. I mean, I can speak from personal experience. I know I was ready to go and enter the job market. I know it's a bit different now, but I didn't have any intention to do further study. But if it's something that you're really passionate about and there's a course that's available, then definitely go for it. But I think I have to agree with Andrew, and you have to give yourself a chance in the job market now.
Yeah, brilliant. And Mike, finally, would you agree with that kind of general consensus?
Yeah, I think so. So, I mean, I did an extra year of study after I finished my degree, and I did find it useful. I think if you think you might end up spending some time not working, it's always better to find something that gives you more skills, more experience. So, if that's something you think you would want to do, I think go ahead and do it. What I would say is try and make sure it's a course or a subject that you think would really add value. Don't do it for the sake of it, but I think there are lots of those things out there, so yeah, it can be a good idea.
Excellent, brilliant. Another question for the panel. How do you identify suitable roles that could lead to where you want to be in the long term? How do I start out right now without selling myself short from the get-go? And how long do we have to go, seeing as we'll all have to work our way back up eventually? So how do you identify suitable roles to lead to where you want to get into the long term? Let's start with Mike on this one.
It's funny you asked that. I almost would kind of question the question slightly on that. I think experience is really, really crucial. And, I think it's easier, especially when you're at the start of your career, to move sideways or to change career. And I've seen people do it all the time, where they'll get a couple of years experience in something and then they'll go, actually, no, it's not for me, I'll change. And it's easy to do that, or easier to do that at the start of your career. So actually, I'd almost encourage you to, to try things, because, actually quite a few people I know out there who really enjoy their careers, never expected to end up in it, and they do that. So, I think, the advantage of when you're young is that you can try, you can experiment with different things. And I think, it's experience is crucial. So if you get the chance to get something, you might find you quite enjoy it.
Brilliant. Heidi, would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, very, very much so. I think, the name of the game right now, and it's been touched on, kind of the different talks, is about being open-minded. In a sense, it's about diversifying yourself. I think it's tempting to get caught up in this idea of a dream job. And I think it's great to have that kind of goal or focus, but I don't think we can predict the future in that way. I don't think any of us have a crystal ball to know what's going to end up being exactly right for us. I certainly never saw myself ending up in education, but through opening myself up to opportunities along the way throughout my career, I found I ended up here in kind of people development, personal professional development. And if I hadn't been open-minded, I might not have landed where I really feel like I was meant to end up. So I think that's the point. It's about being open-minded and embracing all the opportunities available to you, because if we get kind of focused on one thing, we can sometimes miss the thing that might be around the corner that was out of sight because we were so focused on this. So I think that would be my key message.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. Andrew, just coming to you now on the same question about identifying suitable roles and the kind of long-term picture in terms of what you could do now.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said. I think there's sometimes a danger in people looking too narrowly at opportunities that are out there. There may be some really great opportunities that you've never thought of before. So having an open mind and responding perhaps to where opportunities are available, I think is a positive thing. I think for people who do have more of a career focus, they know where they want to get to, don't be afraid to look at more junior roles. I think there's sometimes a danger that people are focusing just on really high profile graduate schemes with big blue chip companies. There may well be lots of other opportunities to break into a career, maybe going into a more junior opportunity in the first instance.
Brilliant. And finally, Sydney?
Yeah, I'll speak from personal experience. I never would have thought I would find myself in the automotive industry. I've never been into cars or engines and still, to be honest, aren't. But I tried something, I got a placement there, really enjoyed my year in industry, and obviously then working back at Rolls-Royce now. So I would say be open to any opportunities, try them, and you might end up liking them. I really like the luxury aspect of the company, and I really like working with outward-facing media. Again, I never thought I'd be dealing with journalists, social media influencers, but it's something I really enjoy. So for me, you just have to try it. And if there's opportunities, don't narrow yourself down to one specific industry or role that you want.
Brilliant. Kind of keeping an open mind, kind of the general view from the panel there. Another question for the whole panel, but we'll start with Heidi. Does anybody have any advice for how to prepare best for video interviews, particularly for questions like, tell us about your successful experiences in the past, and then competency-based questions if you've got limited experience?
Okay, great question. I was actually doing a talk last Friday night for our very own business society on exactly this question. I was thinking I was doing a talk on how to be a successful interview not so long ago. It would have had a slightly different focus, and what I was talking about a lot in this case, because we're talking about a virtual format now, is how do we prepare for that situation? And there's a lot of environmental factors and technology we need to think about, as well as the content of the interview itself that makes it key. As for those thorny questions, obviously recruiters love to ask those competency-based questions. That's based on the logic that the best predictor of our future behaviour is going to be our past behaviour. And if we can evidence that the way we behaved, maybe in an educational setting, a work setting, when we're playing sport, across a variety of situations, if we can display a behaviour, a way of working, then it's going to suggest that that's what we're going to bring to their workplace. So a couple of recommended techniques in that scenario are the STAR technique, which is to respond with the structure of situation, task, action, and response. So that's really setting the context. What was the situation, the task in question? The real key is for the action. What did you do? Not we did this as a team. You know, it's really they want to know about you. You're the one they're interviewing. And then the response piece is what was the outcome? And I think it's important for us to remember as well that they're not always necessarily looking for, hey, I was wonderful from the get-go and I was wonderful throughout. You know, we can learn from our mistakes and we can deal with challenging situations, and employers can know that we're not perfect, but we've learned from things we've done. And the second technique is the interestingly named P technique, P-double-E, which is about making a point, and it's a similar kind of structure, but making a point, giving it examples or evidence, and then explaining it, which kind of means linking it back and relating it back to the question that's been asked. So those are kind of two structures you can use for asking those kind of questions. And then the final thing I'd say about that is, you know, we don't want to sound rehearsed when we're answering questions in interviews. We want to sound kind of honest and authentic. So, you know, whenever I go into an interview situation, I kind of create a list of scenarios, vignettes, stories from, you know, across my life, all those different arenas I already touched on, and kind of think, well, that would be a good example of me demonstrating resilience or overcoming conflict or using my initiative, you know, my adaptability, whatever it may be. So when it comes up in interview, I'm used to creating stories in that kind of structure. So there's not so much pressure to have to structure in that way when you're answering a question. But equally, it's still authentic, and it's not a rehearsed answer. So I'm sorry, I said a lot in there, but hopefully that answers the question and that hasn't stolen other people's thunder.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Heidi. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything. If Sydney, you've got any advice there on video interviews? Obviously, kind of a big thing at the moment with the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, right now, a video interview going on for myself, answering these questions. So I would just say it's good to practice. I'm quite used to these Zoom calls now at work, and I would just recommend if you're going into an interview, maybe rehearse recording yourself reciting your CV and as a first step, and then look into embellishing on that. Talk about your CV in a bit more depth. Talk about experiences. Talk about your university experience. Just practice. You can record yourself on Zoom. Save it onto your desktop, watch it back, see how you can improve. It's just good to see how you look on camera and how you sound, and that's all good practice.
That's excellent. Mike, if you've got anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is, it's funny you say video interview, because actually I don't think in my head there's really much of a difference between a video interview or a kind of face-to-face interview. I think the principles remain the same. And I'd say two things, actually. One is there's a formula to interviews, and there's always a reason why you're being asked the question. So I would have in the back of your mind, why am I being asked this question? What's the rationale? And usually it's something along the lines of they want you to demonstrate your experience. They're not going to catch you out. They want you to talk about what you've done and you know how you've got experience that's relevant to the role, or how you got enthusiasm for the role, so how you show that you've researched it and you understand it. So understand what it is that the interviewer is looking for, and have some things in your armory to talk about. And the second thing I would say is have substance in your responses, because I think this is something that sometimes catches people out. It's very easy for anyone to go into an interview and say, I would be great at this because I'm really passionate about it. But of course, anyone can say that. What sets you apart is saying, I can demonstrate I'm passionate about this because I've done X, Y, and Z, and I've done this and I've done that. So have things ready, and I do think you can prepare for an interview by thinking of what are the questions I might get asked, what are the things people will want to know, because usually it's fairly formulaic and you can predict it, especially when it comes to competency-based interviews. So I would have in your back of your mind, or maybe write it down before you go in, what do I think I'll get asked and what would be my response? And even if that exact question doesn't come up, it'll get you in the right frame of mind to do it.
Fantastic. Now, Andrew, I've got two questions. It's probably most directed towards you, but please feel free, everybody else, to contribute. The first question is, has it been harder to obtain Tier 2 sponsorship with this pandemic going on? And the second question is, I recently graduated but did not finish my employability award. Would I be able to complete it still? The only aspect left is my voluntary work. Let's start with that. Would it be harder to obtain a Tier 2 sponsorship?
Certainly the first question, I think there are changes at the moment taking place to the government's visa system. One thing that's important for current students to be aware of is that anyone who is graduating next summer will, if the government actually confirm the plans, will be able to work for 2 years in the UK through a new post-study visa that is being introduced. I mean, that has been that has been discussed, and there is information on the government website about that, and that is due to start in the summer. I think because of all these changes to the visa system, employers, there's always been scope for them to sponsor for the Tier 2, but I think it's likely to get a little bit easier. Actually, if I may, I just wanted to add something to the previous question about interviews. And that is to say that there are also recorded interviews that employers will use. And the interview simulator that I mentioned is a really great way of practicing for that. Sorry, I just wanted to shoehorn that in. In terms of the employability award, yes, I think it won't be possible now to include that on if a student has now graduated, it can't now be added to the formal transcript. I don't know in what other way we can sort of now complete it. So it may not be possible, but I think the whole point of the Employability Award is actually to get students to do all of the tasks that will help to develop skills, and then to reflect on those skills in order to help them to do better applications and to do better at interviews. So by undertaking the award, you've also already gained an awful lot. If you really want an answer, a specific answer to that question, maybe email careers@surrey.ac.uk and we can look into that for you.
Excellent, thank you very much. One final question. This is just for the panel, so we'll just go around. Do you have any particular advice to give to somebody who has a 2-2 degree, so second class, second 2-2 degree? And we'll start with Heidi, please.
Yes, I would say that's just a grade at the end of the day, and that's not to devalue. People have got a first class and performed really well. The academic element is important, but employers recognise that it's who you are as a person and all the things you have to offer as a result of all the experiences you've had. And I think hopefully we're seeing a shift away in employers from a pure focus on academics and recognising that there are lots of other ways for people to demonstrate their strengths and that what they could offer for the employer in a particular job. So yes, I think students often ask me that question, I didn't perform as well as I'd hoped to, is that really going to go against me? And I think don't get hung up on that. And I also think with the current situation, particularly what's happened to students at a lower level in terms of A-levels and GCSEs and the impact that's had on grades. I was listening on a international webinar today talking about this, where they were saying, employers are starting to flex, and universities are recognising that there have been all sorts of factors that impact on people's ability to achieve certain grades, and it's not the be-all and end-all. That would be my message.
Excellent, thank you, Heidi. That's all we've got time for today, so I'd just like to say a massive thank you, Heidi, Sydney, Mike, Andrew, for joining me here for this Q&A, and thanks to everybody at home for sending in your questions. That's all from us here at the studio. I'm now going to hand back over to Jessie for a few final words.
So now we are at the end of today's event. Huge thanks to our host, Louis, and all our speakers. I hope you've picked up some tips for how to get your foot in the door. And finally, a date for your calendar. Our next event What It Takes to Be Happy at Home and at Work, featuring a fantastic alumni guest speaker, Nick Marks, is on Tuesday, the 24th of November at 6:30 p.m, when we discuss the 5 steps to happiness. Hope to see you then. Thank you.